Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. This was originally supposed to come out earlier today because I was going to be on the road to a screening of A Quiet Place Part 2, but perfect timing as always. I had some car trouble, and so I ended up not taking that trip. So the episode is coming out at the usual time today, but the other consequence is that my review for A Quiet Place Part 2, which was going to be coming out probably early tomorrow morning, will now be coming out late Thursday night or Friday morning because I am going to go grab a ticket. We've already grabbed our tickets, and I'll be seeing it on opening night and doing my review then. So just a little programming note just to let you know that review is going to be a little bit delayed, but there is a review for Cruella that's coming up early Wednesday morning when the embargo drops. I also think I've gotten it filmed. It's being edited. I think this weekend I will also be able to drop my review for Demon Slayer. That's going to be a lot of fun, and we also have some Demon Slayer stuff to talk about. So without further ado, let's talk about the box office, the domestic box office, and the bigger news story of the weekend, the worldwide box office. But we will start at home here in North America, as we always do, and the top five was very sleepy. If it's not rejuvenated from this next week, or I should say this weekend, then we've got a big problem. A Spiral from the Book of Saw repeats in its second week with $4.5 million, followed by Wrath of Man in its third week at $2.9 million. Those Who Wish Me Dead stays in number 3 at $1.8 million. Raya and the Last Dragon actually moves up one spot from number 5 to number 4. It had almost no drop off from last weekend. And then Godzilla vs. Kong in its 8th week comes back into the top 5. So I think what you're starting to see, there are chains that are opening up. Regal is now open up many of their theaters. I think they're all going to be open pretty much by the time this weekend rolls around. What we're seeing here with Raya and the Last Dragon having a very small drop off, Godzilla vs. Kong returning to the top 5, we are seeing, I think, some moviegoers that are going back to check out some of these movies that came out in the past couple months that they didn't get a chance to see on the big screen. Not in great numbers, but still, I think it's encouraging that there are at least some number of people that are saying like, hey, I want to go see this at the movies. I don't want to see it at home. Now, Spiral from the Book of Saw hasn't blown the doors off of the box office, but it made enough, not just here in North America, but worldwide this weekend to pass a very important landmark for the Saw franchise. And I was surprised when I read this because the Saw movies are so small as far as budget goes, and they're also just not big sweeping movies. The Saw franchise has now grossed over $1 billion worldwide combined with all of its films. That's incredibly impressive on its own to have a $1 billion franchise, a $1 billion horror franchise. There aren't that many of them. But the other impressive thing is looking at what these movies made worldwide compared to their budget. So I put together a little chart of that. Now, the spiral part of that chart, that should intersect. I don't know. I have a program that makes the charts. It didn't make it quite right. So, that's not quite accurate. But look at the middle part of this. Now, this middle, the bottom line, the blue line, that's the budget for each Saw film. The orange line is what it made worldwide. And that middle part there, that's what they like to call profit. It may not be net profit, but it's certainly gross profit based off of what you spent versus what you took in. So the first Saw movie cost just over $1 million. It made over $100 million worldwide. And then you see the franchise, the grosses kept going up, at least for the first 3 movies, but the budgets didn't ever really go up to the same degree as the grosses did. So Saw 2 had a $5 million budget. Then the next several hang out around $10 million. Saw 3D, $17 million. Jigsaw had a $10 million budget. And then Spiral, according to the reports that I could find, is actually the highest budgeted Saw movie of all of them. And even though it hasn't blown the doors off, it still is probably going to turn some kind of a profit when you get to the end of the day. Not to the degree that the other movies have, and I think you probably do have to look at the franchise and see if it's going to continue to be viable. But one of the big reasons that you keep seeing Saw movies that are pumped out is that you get a great, like an incredible 10 times or more return on what you put into them, and that's why they keep making them. Saw 6 would be the, depending on how Spiral shakes out, Saw 6 would be the low point as far as the money they put in versus the money they got out, but that's still 6 times the budget. That's not too bad. Most producers would take 6 times their production budget. So congratulations to Saw. I mean, that is impressive, even though, those movies may not be for everyone. I think they got a little derivative and kind of ridiculous as they went on towards the end. But a $1 billion franchise, that's nothing to sneeze at. Now, originally, Spiral from the Book of Saw was the movie that I had down as the top per theater grosser, but looking back and checking this morning, I actually saw that it is a restoration of a French film. It was released here in North America as the swimming pool, La Piscine, I believe is how you pronounce it. But that was actually, as I went back and looked at last week's chart, that was also the top per theater earner last week. So I had Spiral from the Book of Saw. It was actually this film in 4 theaters. Not a huge gross. Sometimes when you have a movie that's in 4 theaters, we see a big per theater average. This is pretty small. It just speaks to the fact that the exhibition business is still getting back on its feet. I mentioned that we were going to talk a little bit about Demon Slayer. It's dropped out of the domestic top 5, but it did pass another big milestone, and this was something that we looked at a few weeks ago. When we look at anime grossers here domestically, it is now the second highest grossing anime film domestically. It passed Pokemon the movie 2000 and is behind Pokemon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. Now, the last time I talked about anime films, I was laughed at for my pronunciation of Pokemon. I'm sorry if that's not correct. To be honest, it's difficult to figure these things out, okay? I'm new. I'm doing my best. I try to look up the pronunciations I don't know, so I apologize if I didn't pronounce that perfectly. But I'm doing the best I can. Demon Slayer I can pronounce, though. Demon Slayer I can pronounce, and so I can say that it is now the second highest grossing anime film of all time. Now, it's not going to take that number 1 spot, but it's still really impressive. And as we mentioned, it is the highest grossing film worldwide in 2020. So it's got plenty of feathers in its cap, so to speak. As I mentioned, that Demon Slayer review is going to be out this weekend with all new pronunciations that I tried really hard on that some of you will probably laugh at. That's okay. Like I said, I'm new. I'm a newbie here to the world of anime. Let's look at the top 10 grossers over the last 365 days. So this is this date to this date last year. And I saw some suggestions actually from some of you in the comments that I really liked. And I always love taking suggestions and making the charts better. So you now will see the movies that are listed. And then the number in the parentheses there next to it is how many days that movie has been in release. So as you can see, Godzilla vs. Kong is number 1. It's the highest grossing film of the last 365 days. It has been in release for 55 days here in North America. The Croods: A New Age at number 2, and it's 181 days of release. Tenet holding on strong, 264, 101 more days, and Tenet will make it the full 365. I was thinking about maybe starting something called like the 365 Club, movies that, don't get pushed off of that list, that they can stay on the top grossing movies for the previous 365 days for a full calendar year. I don't know if Tenet's going to do it. I don't know. It all depends on how these summer movies do. Raya and the Last Dragon, with 81 days in release, moves up 1 spot to number 4. Wonder Woman 1984 moves down 1 spot with 151 days in release, so that is now close to dropping out of the top 5. Tom and Jerry, with 88 days of release, is in 6th place, followed by Demon Slayer the movie and Mortal Kombat, which were released on the same day, 32 days in release. Nobody with 60 days in release. And then at number 10, the longest tenured movie on this list. And this is kind of sad and also a little bit fitting. The New Mutants will not last another week on this list, I don't think. I believe that one or both of the movies coming out this weekend, A Quiet Place Part 2 and or Cruella, are going to bypass the gross of the New Mutants. So I believe this is also going to be the last week that we see the New Mutants on this list. It may be the last week that we see nobody on this list. We'll see how the domestic box office does this weekend. But this is another chart and another improvement from you. You suggested the flags on the worldwide box office chart. I think that was a great suggestion. You suggested the number of days on this chart. So keep those suggestions coming, because I think it only makes the show better. Let's look at the 2021 domestic box office, so movies that have come out since January 1st of this year domestically. Not a lot of change. We have Godzilla vs. Kong, Raya and the Last Dragon, Tom and Jerry, Demon Slayer the movie, and Mortal Kombat, all kind of clustered together 2 through 5 there. But that top 5 has not changed. Then we have Nobody at number 6. Wrath of Man jumps up 3 spots because we have another little cluster down here at the bottom. Spiral from the Book of Saw, its second week of release, is able to put it up at number 8 on the list. So that is a debut film on the 2021 top 10. Then we have The Marksman dropping down 2 spots and The Little Things dropping down 2 spots. The Unholy drops out of the top 10, bumped by another horror film, Spiral from the Book of Saw. And as I mentioned, I think that we're going to see a couple of these films displaced by the movies that are hitting theaters this weekend. Let us check out the 2021 worldwide box office. This requires a little bit of explanation, because there was actually a mistake that I made, but it was actually based on a mistake that was made on a few of the sites because worldwide box office data is very difficult to get. Some sites list some movies, some sites don't list other movies. It's tough to get everything on the same page. So last week I listed both Cliff Walkers and a movie called Impasse. Well, Impasse was the name of Cliff Walkers. It's just an alternate name, but it was listed as two separate movies on one of the sites that I am able to cull information from. So I don't even really know how that happened, but I have gotten rid of Impasse from this list. So this is very much in flux. For example, some lists have Raya and the Last Dragon above Tom and Jerry and in the top 10. Some don't. When you get as close as you are at 8, 9, and 10, it's very difficult to find these consistent pieces of box office data in the moment. Different countries report at different times. Different outlets put different movies on. So this list has become a bit of a challenge. Here's what we do know. We know that Hi Mom is the #1 movie of 2021. We know that Detective Chinatown 3 is number 2, and that Godzilla vs. Kong is number 3. Now, this is the big story of the weekend. The 9th movie in the Fast and the Furious franchise, F9, comes onto the chart at number 4 with a $163 million debut. We're going to break down that debut in just a moment. Cliff Walkers is at 5. A Writer's Odyssey drops 2 spots. Sister drops 1 spot. Endgame stays where it was. Tom and Jerry moves up 1 spot. And My Love goes down 1 spot at number 10. So there are now 3 films from the United States, 7 films from China on that list. We'll see if any more break onto this list in the next couple of weeks. But Fast 9, F9, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people might not realize that it began its global rollout this weekend, but it did indeed. It rolled out in a handful of markets, including Russia, Hong Kong, China, South Korea, a few other markets, particularly in Asia. And it was really just because, Universal was trying to market this, was trying to do the strategy on this, throwing it a moving target. And it looked like the box office, particularly in China, was recovering at a much quicker pace than it was here in North America. And so they scheduled F9 to open a few weeks before it opens here in North America. There's a reason why they did this, and that's because the Fast and Furious franchise has been a very big hit in China, and F9 was no different. I mentioned that it had a gross of around $163 million. About 135 of that came from the Chinese market. So the enthusiasm for the Fast and Furious franchise has not fallen off of a cliff, and people have not forgotten about it. This is a chart looking at the opening weekends in China for the past 5 films, which includes F9. We have Fast and Furious 6, as you can see, opened with $23.6 million. You can almost see the growth of the North American market in China. Then you have Furious 7, which opened with $88.7 million in its opening weekend in China. Then The Fate of the Furious. This was the movie that it had, I think to date, the lowest domestic gross of any Fast and Furious film, at least since it was revitalized with Fast 5. But it had a massive opening in China, $191.3 million. Hobbs and Shaw was just under $100 million. But look with F9, it's obvious that there's something about the Fast trilogy proper that connects with Chinese audiences, $135.6 million. So definitely a drop-off from the last movie, but not a huge drop-off. And again, like I said, this is the reason why Universal was not afraid of this kind of global strategy with the release of the film. They had confidence that the movie would perform well in China. It gets the buzz going, it gets some money in their pockets. And again, remember when they scheduled this, they really had no real idea of what the theatrical marketplace was going to be here in North America. So they've already banked the money that they were hoping to bank. We'll see how it does. Reports have said that the critical scores and the social media scores for this movie are not as high as they were for the previous film, The Fate of the Furious. And we've seen with the Chinese box office many times before that there can be a substantial drop-off, that you can, have a massive amount of money that goes out of your film after the opening weekend. So we will keep track of how the movie continues to do in China past this weekend, but it's a really strong start for F9 as it gets ready for its North American debut in June. Perhaps a harbinger that this could be the movie of the summer. That we did my box office picks. I did not pick F9 as the highest grossing movie of summer 2021, but if the performance stays the same here as it did in China, it's got to have a lot of work to do, because it did lose some steam on the last installment. Who knows? It might be just the same kind of ridiculous that Americans are looking for right now. Only time will tell. This was not the only story, though, involving the American film industry and China that came out this week, because it was also announced through regulatory filings that Wanda, who at one time had the controlling interest in the AMC theater chain, has dumped their remaining shares. They keep a very small amount of stock in the company, which effectively means that they are gone as a meaningful part of how AMC owns and operates. And this is a huge sea change as far as the ownership and as far as how the company is run, because back in 2012, Wanda obtained a controlling interest in the theater chain, which meant that they pretty much could dictate how the theater chain was going to operate. They oversaw things like installing the recliner seats, upgrading the food options in a lot of theaters. We've seen, well, really it's the result of a couple of things. Number one, there was the big spike in the stock price due to Reddit speculation that has happened this year. If you're an investor in AMC, if you hold a lot of stock, that presented a great opportunity if you already had that in hand to sell it perhaps at a much bigger profit than you had a chance to. Back when all of that happened, Wanda converted their shares of stock. They had these different kinds of shares, not to get too technical, but different kinds of stock that allowed them to have 2 votes as a shareholder versus 1. They converted it to a different kind of stock that gave them less control but allowed them to cash out, and that's what they did here in the last few weeks. They have cashed out most of their interest, and so as the CEO of AMC has said, the company is now not run by any controlling interest. It is run by a group of shareholders, just like almost every company. Although there was speculation, and AMC itself also talked about this, depending on the numbers, collectively, if you were to put them in a group, it could be that the Reddit speculators hold the lion's share of shares in AMC. And if they were to somehow come together, if they had the numbers, they could, I mean, if they hold the majority of stock, if they're majority shareholders, they could help dictate the direction of the business. Now, we've seen no evidence that there's a desire to do that, but it is interesting to think about if you were to go out and see who owns every share of stock. The Reddit speculators, I think, are now a large percentage, if not the controlling share of AMC stockholders. That would be a very interesting thing indeed, a plot twist worthy of 2020 and 2021 if we saw some kind of a collective group action to try to dictate what AMC was going to do and what AMC was going to show. Right now, I think AMC, they're very good-natured about it, but I also think it's because they don't really think that this is going to happen. Their tone may change if Reddit actually decided to band together and try to flex their muscle, as it were. So a very interesting development with AMC and with Wanda, and it also is an indicator, it's a story that we've been talking about, the fact that China is investing less and less in the American film industry and more into the Chinese film industry. And the fact that they've retreated, Wanda is a huge multinational corporation, a huge conglomerate. The fact that China had such a huge pull in the American distribution was a big story and kind of told a lot about the nature of the relationship between the Chinese film industry and the American film industry. Now we have seen a retreat, and it only underscores what we've been talking about, which is that the focus is going internally towards China's own film industry. And stories like this, what we're talking about this week with F9, China driving the gross, a lot of times coming in and saving a movie that underperforms domestically. If we continue to see this retraction, this could radically change how much movies make in China, what movies are allowed to be shown in China, what's greenlit, what studios deem is worth the risk, what they budget their movies at. A lot of very interesting things going on with the market as it begins to recover from this year-plus long pandemic. Another encouraging sign about recovery is something that I saw regarding A Quiet Place 2. It's one of 2 major films that are hitting theaters here in North America this Memorial Day weekend. The other one is Cruella, but it's also going to be available as part of the Disney Plus premiere, so you can buy it and watch it at home. So who knows what the impact of that is going to be on the box office. But A Quiet Place Part 2, reportedly, the advance ticket sales for the film right now are tracking ahead of the advance ticket sales last year before the movie came out. People may forget this, but A Quiet Place Part 2 was almost in theaters when theaters closed. They'd had the premiere, they'd had the junket, they were doing pre-sales, and then everything went cuckoo, and they pulled the movie. So we do have pre-sales data, knowing how many people were buying tickets leading up to the release of A Quiet Place Part 2. Fandango reported that this movie is now outpacing what it was doing last year. So that's an encouraging sign that people are ready to get back into the theaters, are anxious to see this movie. I can speak from experience, as I mentioned, that I was purchasing tickets to today to see it on Thursday night, and there were a lot of different screenings to choose from, and a lot of them were sold out. A lot of it is because there were a lot of seats blocked off, because the theater chain that I was looking at still does block off seats due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and so the theaters were not full, but there were a lot of sellout shows and a lot of screenings. So I think the early signs are that we're going to see a very strong number from A Quiet Place Part 2, perhaps the strongest number we've seen domestically since movies really started coming out again this year. That is an encouraging sign for where the box office is headed. And then Cruella, I'm not really sure how it's going to do. Like I said, we never really know how these hybrid releases do, but that is another film. The early buzz on it is good. As I mentioned, you can see my review bright and early on Wednesday morning when the review embargo drops. But if the critical buzz ends up staying as positive as it is, that may also drive a bunch of people out to the theaters. So we go from looking ahead to looking back. Let's look at our box office flashback for this past weekend. And we go back to 2008 with another much awaited sequel, and that is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. From May 23rd to May 25th, 2008, it banked $100 million, although it should be noted that it opened, I believe, a day earlier, and its gross by the end of the weekend was around $125 million. So this is just a 3-day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think that movie opened on Thursday. Still a big opening, not a well-regarded movie, but people were certainly very excited to see Indy come back into theaters. The Chronicles of Narnia: Prince Caspian in its second week with $22.7 million was number 2. Iron Man, though, in its fourth week was still competing for that number 2 slot with $20.4 million. At number 4, What Happens in Vegas? Man, that pairing of Cameron Diaz and Ashton Kutcher, I don't know if you'd see them top-lining a rom-com today, but you sure did back in 2008 with $9.1 million. And then in its third week, a movie that a lot of people think is underappreciated and certainly underperformed at the box office in its third week, Speed Racer from the minds of the Wachowskis in its third week was already down at number 5 with $3.9 million. Before we go, as always, I like to look at the streaming charts to see what people are watching at home. As they also start heading back into the theaters, it's going to be very interesting to watch how these charts change as movies become exclusive to the theatrical window, fewer PVODs, etc. But right now, Nobody, which is one of those hybrid releases, is number 1 still, a very popular premium video on demand title on Amazon. At number 2 is Godzilla vs. Kong. This is an interesting thing. Remember, it was number 5 at the box office. It's now available to buy through certain services. So even though you could buy the movie to watch at home, still people saying that they wanted to go to the theater this past weekend. A Quiet Place moves up to number 3. So I think a lot of people are revisiting the first movie in time to see the second. Raya and the Last Dragon there at number 4 on the chart. The price dropped for the purchase from $29.99 to $19.99, and it's becoming available elsewhere. So that's why I think you're seeing a resurgence of it on this chart. The Croods: A New Age, still a popular rental, followed by the premium video on demand of Voyagers. Minari available to rent at number 7. People buying Chaos Walking at number 8. The Father, another Oscar contender, people renting at number 9. And then John Wick Chapter 3, which has just been a popular title since the pandemic began, at number 10 for rental on Amazon. Let's check out what people are buying through Apple and iTunes. And at number 1 is an Australian film people are renting called The Dry. It came out earlier this year. We saw it on the box office charts. It's number 1 on iTunes, followed by The Marksman. Godzilla vs. Kong, as I mentioned, available to buy. Raya and the Last Dragon, a big drop in the price, and available on iTunes at number 4. Riders of Justice, which stars Mads Mikkelsen, hot off of his appearance in Another Round, which won the Academy Award for Best International Film, is there at number 5. Skyfire, a 99-cent rental, at number 6. At number 7, they're offering all 5 Transformers movies for a good price. I don't know why the hell you'd buy them, but a lot of people did because they're at number 7. Minari at number 8, both in the buy and rent window. The Little Things at number 9. And Four Good Days, which co-stars Glenn Close, who was an Oscar nominee this past year, is at number 10. Looking at what people are watching on Netflix, first let's look at the overall chart, the service in general. At number 1 is Army of the Dead, the latest film from Zack Snyder. This was in select theaters, including a Cinemark theaters, for a week leading up to its release. And I did a review of the movie, which you can see here on the channel. I enjoyed the film. I really did. I saw it in a theater. I don't think it affected my enjoyment that much, although it was nice to see it on the big screen. And I was really surprised because on my review this weekend, after it came out on Netflix, I look at the comments that are coming in. I think every single comment that I got was negative. about Army of the Dead. So maybe I just liked it more than the average person. Maybe it was the theatrical experience that enhanced the movie for me. Maybe it was just that people got angry that they watched the movie and decided to go leave bad comments on all the reviews. I don't know. They weren't angry at me, but they sure were angry at the movie. I was kind of shocked, to be honest. I thought that there would be a wave of enthusiasm for Army of the Dead this past weekend. There was not, at least not according to the people who comment on my reviews. But it is the number one overall thing on Netflix here in the United States. Who Killed Sarah, a Netflix series, is at number 2. The Woman in the Window at number 3. Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, it added some new episodes. It's there at number 4. The Mitchells versus the Machines at 5. The Upshaws at 6. Sabotage is there at number 7. Coco Melon. The kids love that Coco Melon. You know, I looked actually today and I realized that Coco Melon, there's only 6 episodes. And they're like an hour each, which means, you know, the whole series is at most 6 hours long, which to me says that there are a lot of parents out there who are having to watch the same 6 1-hour episodes over and over and over and over again, because Coco Melon has been on this chart for weeks at this point. So if you are a parent whose kids like Coco Melon, it looks like a very limited sample size. So my condolences to you, because it can't be easy at this point. I think we're into like month 2 of Coco Melon being in the top 10. Jupiter's Legacy, the Netflix original series, is at number 9, and Startup, which is not a Netflix original series but is a series, is at number 10. And then looking at the top 10 movies only on Netflix, Army of the Dead is at number 1, The Woman in the Window at number 2, and The Mitchells versus the Machines at 3. Sabotage is at number 4. Jungle Beat the Movie, a Netflix original, is at number 5. The Whole Truth at 6. I Am All Girls, another Netflix original, is at 7. Madagascar 3 and The Secret Life of Pets 2 are numbers 8 and 9. And then at number 10 is State of Play. So that wraps up my look at the box office, both domestic and worldwide, for this week. Join me next week. I think that the show will actually probably be on Tuesday because of the Memorial Day weekend. That will allow the 4-day grosses to come in, give me some extra time to look at the box office. Like I said, looking at some of the tea leaves, I don't think we're going to be at pre-pandemic levels, but it looks like we are going to see a robust box office this upcoming weekend, especially with so many regulations being loosened, with numbers going down, with vaccination rates going up. It looks like we are really turning a corner. Perhaps we have turned the corner. We can certainly hope, because this has been a very long road for everyone involved. We'll look at all those numbers next week. As I mentioned, it's still going to be a very busy week on the channel. We have the live show coming up. There's some special surprises that I can't wait to talk to you regarding the live show. There's also the review of Cruella. We have the Demon Slayer review. Lots of stuff still to come. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to tune in to all my movies, which will be out on Wednesday, along with the Cruella review. We are talking about one of the biggest movies of all time, The Empire Strikes Back. We're wrapping up May with a big one, and I can't wait for you to join us and talk about it then. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.